Welcome to the Sports Court. I'm Gregory Beatty, alongside Eddie Cox is in the house. The Sports Court is in the house. Glad to be here. Seems like it's been forever since we've been in here, Eddie. But hey, it's fun to be back. Things happen. Other obligations come up. And so, look, we're back. And I also want to say welcome back to the U.S. Olympic team, making it back safely from the Olympics across seas, making it back safe and sound. So congratulations on that, on the job well done. Job well done. You ever seen that commercial where the little girl is learning she's getting potty trained, and job well done. And then the mom look at her like, but little precious little pumpkin. But job well done by the Olympic team. Of course, Eddie also, of course, the NFL. You know the NFL season is here. It's not near and dear to our hearts. It's here right now. The Cowboys opened up. They opened up against the Steelers in the Hall of Fame game, and same old with the Cowboys. Of course, the Cowboys did not play with Dak Prescott. He's on the mend from that shoulder injury. And, of course, Ezekiel Elliott. The Cowboys, a team that's on Hard Knocks, a show that I did not get a chance to watch last night. So I'll catch it maybe at some point. But lost 16-3 to the Steelers in the Hall of Fame, in the game preceding the Hall of Fame announcements and the Hall of Fame enshrinement. We could talk about that. I want to get your thoughts on that. But the Cowboys, I love what I was witnessing from the first round draft pick, Michael Parsons. I love what he was doing out there. The guy was flying around the field. Obviously, only 2 possessions, Eddie, but you just saw the impact that he's going to have, the way he just darts around the field, the way he just, like he said before the season started when they drafted him, his motto is see ball, get ball. And it seems like that's how he plays. He diagnoses things real quick, and he's always around the football. Granted, like I said, it was only 2 series, but I love what I'm seeing from him, and we'll see if that defense can materialize under Dan Quinn. Of course, they're going to play faster. They have some athletes on that squad. So we're going to talk some NFL. Of course, Deshaun Watson and the Texans, he's supposedly not going to play in the first preseason game, which is not a surprise to any of us. And, of course, Eddie, the NBA, you had Russell Westbrook since the last time we've been in here. He's gotten traded to the Los Angeles Lakers to form that trio with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. I want to get your thoughts on that, of course. Of course, plenty of baseball to talk about. You have MLB trades, and think Scherzer, Trey Turner, to the Dodgers. The Dodgers just keep making moves, keep getting better. The Phillies and my guy Bryce Harper, we'll talk about him. He's back looking like an MVP type candidate. Of course, Fernando Tatis is injured. They may move him to the outfield if he comes back. We'll talk about that if we have a chance, but I don't even know if he should come back this year. That shoulder has been dislocated, 4 or 5 times already this year? He's on the fence again with that shoulder. He's on the mend again with that shoulder. So maybe he should sit it out and have surgery. One thing about it, whether he comes back and plays or not this year, he's definitely going to have surgery. But what I want to ask you about first is what you think about the Houston Rockets draft choice, Jalen Green. I love it.
In this city, I think that there's been so much disappointment surrounding, the Houston Texans, the Rockets last year. And then even leading up to the draft, some of us were terrified that somehow, some way, the Rockets were going to find a way to not have one of them premier picks at the top of the draft. We were almost sweating bullets just hoping. You're thinking there's no way they get one outside, but still, nothing's a guarantee, and especially the way things had been going for the Rockets and the city of Houston as of late, you didn't think anything was going to work out. And then draft night comes and goes, and the Rockets have a hell of a night, and these kids are getting out there.
Was nice.
Yeah, they're getting out there, and they're playing together. They ended up, making some moves to position themselves in different places in the draft. But ultimately, instead of moving most of their picks, they kept them. Mm-hmm. And now they have a young nucleus of guys. If these guys stick around, if they choose to continue to build with these same guys, they have a nucleus of guys that are getting people excited, that are having people looking up and thinking, hey, the Rockets really do have something going here. Maybe there is going to be life after James Harden for Houston and for the Rockets. It's just all going to swirl around how Jalen Green develops, how Josh Christopher continues to develop, Alfie Sengun, I believe that's how you say it. I'm going to spend a lot of time learning this guy's name because he's already turning heads in the summer league. And then, of course, Christian Wood and the guys that are already there, Jayshawn Tate. I mean, it's not going to be an immediate turnaround, but there's definitely a lot to get excited about when we talk Houston Rockets basketball.
Hey, I totally agree. And you know what? A few weeks ago, when we were talking the draft, you brought up Jalen Green's name. And a couple of years ago when he was in high school, I always like to catch these guys when they're in high school, the true prospects, the phenoms, and really follow them from that point and see what type of career they have moving forward. I did the same thing with Kobe and on and on and on. But Jalen Green is a guy that a friend of mine hit me to him a couple of years ago when he was in high school, say, you need to check out this guy, Jalen Green, because he knows how I like wing players, high flyers, and guys that's just ultra athletic. And I checked him out on YouTube. I said, he's the real deal. He's the real deal. Now, the thing about it, he didn't end up going to college. He played in the G League, and you saw. So when they were talking the draft, then it dawned on me. I was like, and even when you brought him up a few weeks ago, I say, that's the guy I remember watching. He was kind of out of sight, out of mind. I say, that's the guy that I remember watching, that I remember seeing a couple of years ago, the top player in high school coming out that year, along with Cade Cunningham. So after watching this guy, man, I'm talking about, he reminds me of Kobe Bryant. He really does. I'm talking about an athletic wing like that. I mean, even if you look at guys like Andrew Wiggins.
Speaking of Kobe, show him the gear real quick.
Oh, Kobe Bean.
Check that out.
This is T.I.'s clothing line, Aku, and just giving Kobe a shout out right here. And T.I., of course, obviously.
It sounds like Jalen Green as well. Those are some big
Jalen
shoes
Green.
to fill and high expectations.
Hey, man, you know what about Jalen Green, though, Eddie? What I like about Jalen Green, and of course him and Cade Cunningham, the top two picks in the draft, they faced off last night in a game, summer league game, but they both faced off, and I like what I saw from both of those guys. But I'll tell you right now, if I had my choice, and this is tough because you can't go wrong with Cade Cunningham, 6'8" point guard who can do it all and silky smooth, methodical in his movements, not as athletic as Jalen Green, but gets to where he needs to get to, can do a little bit of everything, great leader, gets his teammates involved. Jalen Green is a scorer. He's a high-wire act, and he's a guy, what I love about him is his mentality. That's the same thing that attracted me to Luka Doncic was his demeanor, the way he just goes out there. He plays like he belongs. Now, being in the G League, of course, instead of college last year, that really helped him along. That really escalated his development and brought him along very, very quickly. He was able to work on this game against top-level competition. But what you see from this guy, Jalen Green, you see a guy who I think will average at least 20 points a game this year because he's coming to a team in the Rockets that's lost James Harden, of course. You know what James Harden did as far as scoring the basketball. But Jalen Green is a guy that seems like he's going to come in, and he knows they're going to be in a rebuilding stage, and they're going to give him the ball and say, go do what you do. But the thing about it, he can affect the game in many ways too, but he can also get to the free throw line. He went 10 for 11 last night, scored 25 points last night, had a few rebounds, a few assists. And what he did, I like what he did early off in the game, Eddie, because I thought they were trying to freeze him out. Then I said, okay, of course these other guys too, they're trying to make the team, Josh Christopher and these guys. And I said, they need to get him the ball. But he let the game come to him, and he had 4 turnovers in that game, and they were really d'ing up on him at first. They were really concentrating on him. But what I like about him is he seems like he's going to be able to get 20 points in his sleep just because of his mentality, because of his athleticism. He can knock down the three. And again, he's a guy that can attack the basket, go to the free throw line, slow the momentum down of the opposing team if they're cooking right then, and knock down free throws. And I love the guy.
I'm definitely just as excited as you are. I agree with every one of those points you make. I think the thing that I'm most excited about is that these guys are going to get to grow together. It's going to be an organic situation whenever the leadership starts to develop and certain players start to, take on these leadership roles and do the things that leaders do. Something we haven't had in Houston in a long time when it comes to the Rockets. I mean, this team is going to be built in a completely different way. It's not going to be top heavy like it used to be where, you come in and you got to watch James Harden play some pretty spectacular basketball, but ultimately you don't really know if he's invested in winning you a championship or not. You don't really know if he cares more about the team or about James Harden. Those kinds of issues are no longer going to be issues that the Houston Rockets are going to have to deal with any longer now that they've got this just influx of new young talent in their system and in their organization.
Hey, you know what? And also, Eddie, the thing about Jalen Green is he's box office. So he comes to Houston, a big market, and again, they're going to give him the basketball.
We're
Now,
starving for somebody too. You know,
Huh?
they're starving for a star.
Right, especially ever since James Harden left. Now,
They got a
what I
taste of
like what the
Christian
Rockets
Wood,
did,
but he didn't stick around long enough, and you feel like the Rockets purposely shut him down, along
Right.
with John Wall, to purposely lose and actually have the opportunity to acquire Jalen Green.
and what I like about the Rockets, what they're doing, the entire team is in Vegas supporting these guys, supporting these rookies, because they know the influx of talent that they have coming in with the aforementioned Jalen Green. And then you have Sengun, the guy from Turkey.
You know, Harden was in Vegas every year too, but he wasn't at the games.
Right.
Every once
Right,
in a while.
Right. Now
you know
have
where
the
he
whole
was
team
at.
there. You know where he was at. But the entire Rockets team is there supporting these rookies, and Josh Christopher is looking like he's a keeper. Alpi Sengun, 6'9", from Turkey, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so.
And
I saw a highlight of him behind the back.
yes, he's nice. He's a
In
guy that
between
can
two
affect the game in a
defenders.
few different ways. He's a guy that's 6'9". He can rebound the basketball. He's smart. He can stretch the floor, and you can post him up down low. And again, he plays some defense as well. But what I like about Jalen Green as well, of course, we're talking about his offensive exploits right now. But what he's going to be able to bring with those long arms and that body of his, that frame of his, and he's going to fill out eventually. He seems already wiry strong right now. But he's going to bring that defensive intensity as well. I think before it's said and done, he's going to take out the same career paths as guys like Kobe, LeBron, all these great wing players who has that mentality that they know they're great, they know they have talent, and they go out on the floor and they make sure that you know that they're great as well. But I think he's going to bring it on the defensive side of the ball as well. But you can't go wrong with either him or Cade Cunningham in a situation like that. But if I had my pick, I would pick Jalen Green after watching him these last couple of games. And because, for one, I just love Kobe-esque type players, for one. For two, he's in Houston. I'm glad he fell to Houston. That gives me another reason to really want to watch the Rockets, to go along with what you said, you know, the guys that they're building around. And it's going to be very interesting. I like what Jalen Suggs is doing in Orlando. He's going to be a great leader. He's the type of guy, you know, he's going to come in and he's going to show and he's going to lead by example. I think Orlando has a keeper. When he fell to Orlando, Scotty Barnes to Toronto. I mean, it was, hey, but I'm telling you, Davion Mitchell for Sacramento. Remember when I told you before the draft, way before the draft, when they were still playing the NCAA tournament, I say, this guy is going to be a great pro. He reminds me a lot of Vinnie Johnson. He's going to be a 5-starter off the bench, maybe like a Vinnie Johnson, and he's already showing that with Sacramento. You're talking about a young nucleus in Sacramento. Woo! I'm talking about they look like they're a team to be reckoned with De'Aaron Fox, Buddy Hield. I mean, oh, man.
I guess it ultimately remains to be seen if they end up moving one of those guys, because there's been so much talk surrounding possible trades of, you know, those two guys, in particular Buddy Hield. So, I mean, if they do decide to move on and go even younger, I mean, they'd be adding on to what I feel like is already a pretty stacked deck.
There it is. And as far as Detroit got them a surefire superstar in Cade Cunningham. And I know a lot of people they're going to compare, like we're doing tonight, well, like I'm doing at least, comparing him and Jalen Green. They both had good games last night. Jalen Green was more efficient last night, but it was one game. And, of course, what's going to matter as far as these guys' Rookie of the Year, as far as Rookie of the Year is concerned, it's all going to depend on the team that's around these guys. I think the Rockets, even though the Pistons got the first pick, and, of course, they're devoid of a lot of talent, I like what Luke Garza is going to be able to bring them, a guy that was the College Player of the Year last year, dropped to the second round, but I think he's going to be a good pro, a nice player that you can depend on, that's going to give you solid numbers, not the most athletic guy in the world. But you have to give Cade Cunningham some pieces to build around so you can really get the full complement of the skill set that he brings. I mean, if he's going to get other players involved, he has to have some other players around him. I think right now Jalen Green is coming to a situation with guys like Christian Wood, John Wall. I mean, I like what the Ricky Sengun is doing. He's probably going to come in, even though the Rockets lost James Harden, but they have Tate, I mean, the Rockets have some young talent. They may be better a lot sooner than people think.
You know, one thing that I'm looking at, and I'm actually thankful with the Rockets getting the second pick and picking Jalen Green. Sometimes being number two, even though it's coming with some big
He says he has a
expectations
chip on
here
his
in
shoulder.
Houston, national, nationally, I don't think it has the same expectations. There's not the same expectations that fall on a guy like Jalen Green as there are falling on Cade Cunningham. And maybe that stunts his development a little bit. Maybe it makes it a little bit tougher road for him. I don't know, but he's not the issue here in Houston. It's Jalen Green. But I think just being the number 2 overall pick is going to opens things up a little bit for Jalen. There's not going to be the national media swarming around. If he struggles early on, it's not going to be as big a story as it will be if Cade Cunningham, for whatever reason, doesn't look like he's the prospect that he was cracked up to be early on in the NBA season.
And then if Jalen Green, to our point, if Jalen Green actually excels early with the Rockets and is averaging 20 points a game and he comes out the gates like flying high, then everybody's going to be saying that he maybe should have been the number 1 pick. But I think people will give Cade Cunningham time to develop. They're going to look at the team that's around him. And I think both of these guys are going to be surefire superstars, if they keep their health and stuff in check. But I really like both of those guys. I like the top 4 or 5 picks in the draft. And again, Davion Mitchell. I mean, come on, man. I'm gonna tell you another team that had a low key nice draft was Golden State. I don't have the guy's name right in front of me right here, but Golden State, the guy that they got at number 7, I think they had the 7th and 11th pick, huh, Eddie? Tell me that real quick, please, sir.
Was it 7th and 11th? I don't know why I thought it was 14th.
Yeah. Well, maybe 14th. You could be right. But the guy that they got at that 4 position, he's a guy that at the number 7 pick, right?
Right.
The guy that they got at that number 7 pick, he's a guy that can be a player that can help them right away. I mean, can come in and actually shoot. You pull his name up right there?
I got you right here. Golden State, James Bouknight, guard, Connecticut.
He was the 2nd pick. First pick in that draft. Number 7.
That's what I've got here at 7.
At 7? Mm-hmm. He wasn't the 7th pick.
Number 4. This is on. Oh, okay. There we go. This is not what I pulled up the wrong article.
Good.
This is a. Here we go.
I just want to say his name since I brought him up. I didn't really hear about him until the draft, right before the draft, and I was watching a lot of tape on him, things like that. He's a guy that can play some defense. He can rebound. I think he's like 6'8", but he's a guy that can help in the rotation and help Golden State do what they do.
Yeah, Jonathan Kuminga.
There he is.
Number 7 pick.
There he is. And he's a guy. So, I mean, there was some nice draft picks in that draft. So, real quick, before we move on to some baseball, NFL, whatever else you want to talk about, what do you think, staying on basketball for a second, Russell Westbrook traded to the Los Angeles Lakers, forming another big 3. What do you think about that, my friend?
Interesting move.
It's interesting.
The Lakers are going to try anything. I mean, at this point, it seems like I don't know how they're finding the salary to sign some of these guys or to bring them in, but they're making it work. But this will be interesting. With Russell Westbrook joining that squad, he's not going to be asked to do some of the things he was asked to do in Houston. As a matter of fact, he's going to be asked to do some completely different things and a whole lot less shooting the basketball from the outside in particular. Can it work? I mean, absolutely. I mean, when you already have a guy like LeBron James who's known for being a grinder, who's known for bringing the energy, and who I know some people downright fear playing in the playoffs, adding somebody like Russell Westbrook to take the pressure off of him, I think definitely helps. And also, when you're not asking too much from Russ, there's going to be opportunities where he's going to shine. I mean, I kind of liken it to Boogie Cousins when he gets, now where he's at, finding a way to be impactful whenever you're not asked to do too much. Because at this stage in your career, Russell Westbrook, while still a tremendous athlete, there's definitely a lot of holes in that game that teams have honed in on and identified. And if they can force Russell into those areas of the floor where he is not effective and get him out of his game, then he will be more of a detriment to the Lakers than an assistance or a help to them. But if they use him wisely, and I'm sure they will. I mean, you don't swing for the fences with a guy like Westbrook unless you absolutely have a plan for exactly how you're going to use this guy. I think it keeps them in the conversation. But I think what we learned last year was what we all kind of thought with the Lakers is that you never know when LeBron is going to show that wear and tear that he's been somehow able to rise above year after year. At some point, he's going to start showing that wear and tear. And when, not if, when is Anthony Davis going to get injured? And when is he going to be out of the lineup? And is it going to be a big game or a big playoff series? And if it is, then the Lakers might as well just step out of the way because there's too many talented teams in the West, and it's too competitive for them to be able to withstand something like that. Russell helps them, but ultimately, in the end, it's still the same deal. They're all going to have to be healthy. Anthony Davis is going to have to be there.
That's what happened with the Nets last year.
He doesn't give you. He's not giving you like a backup plan if one of your big guys goes down. All he's giving you is some much needed energy and some veteran leadership that can pick up in some of the places where maybe LeBron James and Anthony Davis have lacked a little bit.
Well, you know what? He's definitely a superstar. First ballot Hall of Famer. And one thing the Lakers have done, especially since Pelinka has gotten there, they've gone after the big names to surround LeBron. Of course, Anthony Davis, but they go after the big names, and what they do, they get those guys in the building, and then they say, we'll figure it out once they get here. Now, as far as Russell Westbrook, I mean, the thing, as far as the style of play, now, first of all, he's going to have to check his ego at the door. And I think at this point in his career, he's going back home to L.A., and supposedly him, Anthony Davis, and LeBron James had a meeting of the minds before the deal was made that all egos were going to be checked at the door. Of course, everybody's going to say the right thing. I hope Russell right now, he's in a good place, 32 years old.
Right.
He has all the individual awards. Of course, you know, he's ultra competitive, so he's not going to change his stripes in that regard. Now, what he has to do, he has, again, check his ego at the door, but he has to fit into what the Lakers and LeBron James and Anthony Davis are doing. They don't have to fit into his style. They've already shown that they can win a championship, those two together. So Russell Westbrook is going to have to come in there. You know he's probably going to be used in a lot of isolation, a lot of pick and rolls. Like you said, he's not a knockdown shooter, but what you gain, I mean, he's a true superstar. So you have to, if you get a chance to acquire Russell Westbrook, I can't fault the Lakers for that. Now, when I first saw the move, I said, okay, now, of course, they gave up Kuzma, who we've talked about before. You mentioned that Kuzma may actually excel now that he's not under the umbrella of LeBron James and Anthony Davis, so we'll get a chance to see that. They give up Caldwell Pope, who can knock down the three and play some defense, and they give up Montrezl Harrell. So even though you don't get – now, they picked up Carmelo Anthony. I think they're going for the senior citizens team or something. But they picked up Carmelo Anthony, which I'm happy for Carmelo. He can still give you 15 a game if you play him the right amount of minutes and things like that. But they really haven't – now, they may pick up Isaiah Thomas. The left-handed Isaiah Thomas, they may pick him up. He just scored 81 in a game the other day in one of these leagues. And, I mean, he just scored 81. I just saw that before I came up here. He scored 81 points in one of these games for some league he's playing in right now. And I'll tell you like this. What Russell Westbrook is going to be able to do, even though he's not going to be consistent from three-point range and he's not going to be able to space the floor for the Lakers per se, but what you're going to have, of course, you're going to have an ultra competitor, like you said, who if any of those other two guys fall off, he can go get you 25, 30, 35. So it's no doubt. And he's always going to be up there in assists. He does that every year. I mean, he led the entire league in fourth quarter playoff assists last season. I mean, this past season. So he's going to do that. What's going to matter with him is, what's going to be the most important thing with Russell Westbrook is, when they get to these playoff games, is he going to make, and I've said it a million times, what type of decisions is he going to make at the most opportune times, or what type of decisions is he not going to make at the most inopportune times, as far as an ill-advised shot or a turnover. But even though you won't get that consistent three-point shooting, you know you have to respect him because he's a Hall of Famer, a guy who is the leader in averaging the triple-double. I mean, leads the entire NBA in history as far as triple-doubles. Of course, Oscar Robertson, we know he did, but they didn't even start keeping that stat till a while later. But surefire Hall of Famer, but you know you're going to be able to get a guy that can attack the basket. So the Lakers are probably looking at it like, who needs a three-point shot or some knockdown three-point shooters, even though three is more than two? But who needs that when we have three guys that can take it to the rim? And LeBron, AD, and Russell Westbrook, they can take it to the rim and get high percentage shots. So that's what he's going to be able to give you. Now, I don't know how much LeBron. I don't know how much because Russell likes to get out and go. Even to this day, Russell likes to get out and go. I don't know how much LeBron likes to get out and run at this point in his career. I mean, you can't run LeBron into the ground, at 36 years old. So it's going to be interesting to see how they mesh. But the fact of the matter is you're getting a first ballot Hall of Famer, ultra competitor, a guy that all he wants is a championship. Let him tell it. So I think he's going to come in. He's going to do the right thing. Even though he's not a super defensive player, he's adequate enough. And he'll have some guys behind him, some bigs, Anthony Davis, LeBron, some other bigs that can protect him. But he's going to compete. He's going to compete at a high level. So hopefully.
It
so
doesn't
we'll see.
work with anybody else but LeBron James leading these guys. I mean, they've tried other places, with certain guys. Carmelo's been around the block plenty of times, and then here you've got sort of the same thing going on with Russell Westbrook now at this point in his career. But things are going to be different whenever it's LeBron James that Russell has the answer to, and it's not James Harden who he could look at and say, man, I was there when you came in the league. I taught you what you know when you got to OKC, this, that, and the other. There's not going to be that dynamic whenever you're playing with the king. There's no doubt about who sits atop that hierarchy in LA, and that's LeBron James, and that's going to be the best thing they have going for them with all these geriatrics they're taking in the next season.
Hey, you know what, too? And to that point exactly, I totally concur with that because if it was Kobe Bryant, I don't think they make that move. Because you're talking about two guys with the same mentality. They're both are always on attack mode. Now, maybe Kobe, 36, 37-year-old Kobe, maybe. But Russell Westbrook and Kobe would love him because he reminds him of himself as far as being ultra competitive and things of that sort. But I don't know if those two would, because Kobe needs the basketball. Kobe's a scorer. He's an assassin. Russell wants to do the same thing. Now, LeBron would probably be the type of guy, he's more of a pass-first type guy, even though he's going to get his. So I agree with that. LeBron is the guy, with his leadership qualities, when you go play for a LeBron James-led team, you have to fall in line. And I'm sure at this point in Russell's career, he realizes that. Now, he's played with some tremendous players, and he wasn't able to get it done. Now, to the point about him not being a team player, I disagree with that. Russell has always been a team player. I think sometimes he lets his ego and his competitive spirit get in the way of making sound decisions. And so that's what I mean about, is he going to make the right decisions
Greg,
at the right time?
A lot of that has to do with his days in OKC, whenever it was just all on him for so long. All Russell Westbrook had after James Harden left and after KD left, all Russell Westbrook had to trust, and all he could trust was himself. But for the most part, there really wasn't talent around him. So he spent years playing basketball. He had guys like Steven Adams and whatnot.
Well, they had Paul George for a year, and Paul George even said, Eddie, that Russell was a great teammate. Paul George actually had his best year that year in OKC, and with the help of Russell Westbrook deferring to him a lot.
And even then,
Russell got his too.
Yeah, even
he averaged
then,
28 that year.
Yeah, this
Paul
is still
George
later in his career. I mean, I'm telling you that all those years he spent getting all those triple doubles, winning the MVPs, but not really having success. As having team success by going deep in the playoffs and winning playoff series. I mean, that changed the way Russell Westbrook played. He's got to reprogram himself now if he wants to have success, being just a cog in the device and not just the driving force behind everything that happens, and particularly offensively.
There it is. So we'll see what happens. But I'm not going to say I'm crazy about the pickup. But, hey, I mean, it's Russell Westbrook. I mean, you can't argue with that. I mean, you have three superstars on one team, and they have to figure it out. Like I said, the Lakers, that's what they do. They get you in the building, and they say, with LeBron James, we're going to figure this out because here's a guy that can make everyone around him better. So I look forward to seeing that. And I also look forward to seeing Kyle Kuzma, and I want to see his evolution, like we talked about a while back when you made a great point when you said that maybe it was LeBron James and Anthony Davis was the reason that stunted his growth because those guys are such alphas, and he probably didn't get a chance to really shine like he really wanted to. So I thought that was an astute point by you a while back, and so that really put me on notice to really look out for him moving forward and see if that really was the case. So, hey, moving on to some NFL, unless you want to talk some MLB first.
Whatever you want to do, big dog. You're steering this ship.
Hey, man, it's your world. It's your world. I'm just living
riding.
in it.
I tell you what, we'll go ahead and talk. We're going to talk NFL, but I do want to touch baseball. We'll talk Astros last. I want to just get your thoughts. J.R. Richard
Oh man,
passes on while we were out of the studio. You just give
yeah,
me some thoughts. I know you were close
yes.
with Jr. Just tell me a little bit about
You
that
know what, Eddie,
relationship and
man?
about Jr. Richard in general for those who may not like me, who may not have gotten to experience
Right.
what he was as a player and then what he was as a person afterwards. You know, with how his career abruptly ended and whatnot.
Right. You know what, Eddie, man? Thanks for bringing that up. And my dear friend J.R. Richard passed last week of COVID. Of course, his career was cut short by the Houston Astros in 1980 from a couple of mini strokes that he had. I still remember watching the news, watching the sports part of the news that day when they were in the Astrodome and they were wheeling him off the field. I remember that like it was yesterday. But a guy from 1976, I think he was drafted in 1971, first round from Louisiana, 6'8", flamethrower, threw 100 miles an hour. I mean, at will. I'm talking about had the hottest fastball in MLB at the height of his career. But from 1976
They
to
said it was like looking
1980,
at Kareem
hey, bro.
Abdul-Jabbar pitching to you.
Hey, seriously, 6'8", and he played basketball too in high school, obviously. But the guy was a flamethrower, and he was really coming into his own. And he told me as much. Obviously, I had him on the show. When I first started this show, almost 5 years ago. He was one of my first guests, and I'm gonna tell you, man, it's only really three guys that I can think of in my life that I've really been in awe of, and J.R. Richard was one of them, and I would say the other two were Lawrence Taylor and Chris Carter when I went to Ohio State, because I remember watching him when I was a freshman in high school, and I remember watching him in that game against Illinois, that game when Keith Byers' shoe kicked off, and I was like, who was that number 2 right there? But I was an Anthony Carter fan, even though I didn't go to Michigan. That's why I wanted to wear number 1 in high school. But Chris Carter, who I actually got to meet and became cool with, Chris Carter, Lawrence Taylor, and J.R. Richards. So a friend of mine, to make a long story short, a friend of mine actually connected me and J.R., and I had just started the show. And J.R. said he usually doesn't do this, but since my friend spoke so highly of me and came in, did the show, talked to him that Saturday for like an hour, and came in and did the show. And I'll tell you this, man, you're talking about, I'll be honest, and I'm a guy that usually doesn't get nervous, but when I first started doing that show, I said, this is J.R. Richard across from me. And I was in awe. I'll admit that I was in awe. And that's an interview that I learned so much from that interview, because my friend afterwards told me, my friend called and said, GB, just be yourself, man, and do what you do. Just shoot the breeze with him. And that's what I would have normally had done. But when I talked to him that Saturday, the only thing he talked about with that whole hour was God and this and that. I'm like, so I'm like, okay, cool, but I don't really know how to come at him. I didn't realize till 45 minutes into the show how cool he was and down to earth he was. You know, cursed a little bit during the break or whatever. And I said, oh, man, I should have been shooting the breeze with him the whole time. But I thought he was all this holy guy at this point. But to say this, man, from 1976 to 1980, he was at the height of his career when he had that stroke. Had made it to the All-Star game a couple years in a row. Was the most dominant pitcher. He was on the staff with Phil Niekro, Nolan Ryan. I mean, he would have been a surefire Hall of Famer, Eddie. I'll tell you this. Then I had an opportunity to present him with an award at a banquet about 3 or 4 months after we did that show. So I hadn't talked to him in a while. Had planned on calling him, asked him to come join us on the show one day, talk a lot of basketball and just shoot the breeze or whatever. But unfortunately, last week he passed. May he rest in peace. Went through some hard times after his MLB career. Went through bankruptcy. Was homeless for a while. Got back on his feet. Became an ordained minister. And, you know, hey, man, what a tragic loss for a great guy. And thanks for bringing that up, man. But rest
True
in peace.
Houston legend, R.I.P. J.R.
Yes.
Richard.
You know what, too? Bobby Bowden.
Oh, yeah, man. We got to talk about Coach Bowden. Just watching some of the old interviews that they do with Bobby Bowden. Man, is there a guy that loved coaching more, you know, and not just coaching, but loved coaching kids?
That Southern
you
charm.
know, coaching young men. And this is something that with football coaches, you know, it gets talked about, but, you know, it gets underrated a lot, too. Some of the impact that some coaches have on a lot of young men. I mean, I still have relationships with some coaches I played football and baseball for when I was in high school. You don't see these guys for 14 years, 15 years, and you run into them, and they still remember you. They remember, you know, what you did bad, what you didn't do, or what you did well. You know, you could tell the ones that really care, and definitely Bobby Bowden cared more about those kids than he cared about the success of his football program. The way he identified success, from everything I know of and have seen about Bobby Bowden, is what kind of men did he have leaving his program, and the fact that they were two-time national champions in the 90s and won more football
Yes.
games in the 90s than any other college program. That was just the icing on the cake. That just showed you how damn good of a football coach Bobby Bowden was. But he never took for granted his position, and he never took lightly the position or the role he played in his players and those young students' lives when they joined the program and even afterward.
By golly, if I go to a local sandwich shop and I see my boys, I see them eating sandwiches and all this and that, and all of them have them iced tea, that means I know we're all on the same page. That gummit, by golly. Nah, man, I loved him as well, man. I loved him as well. And a great coach, and a guy, like you said, players love to play for him. And the longevity, 34 seasons at Florida State, 12 ACC titles. Think about that. 2 national titles, 14 years in a row. 14 years in a row, this guy had Florida State in the top 5, 14 years in a row. That's unheard of. But the longevity and the respect that he commanded, but what I like mostly about what you said, how you described him, was the fact that a guy that really cared about his players. And that's so true. He was a guy that can go into someone's home and really, really, really make their parents feel at ease about going off to school to play for this guy, because he's going to better them, he's going to further their education, and help them evolve as men, almost like a second father, so to speak, and a first father for some of them. But this guy, may he rest in peace. And we talked about it last week when we found out he had pancreatic cancer. What did I say? I said that's a very aggressive cancer. I had an uncle that passed from it. I had a close friend, Jeff Ellis, college teammate, that passed from it, and it all went like that. I was on the phone with Jeff almost at least twice a week, and this happened 3 years ago. He was my host when I went to Ohio State my freshman year. Had so much fun on that. On my recruiting visit, him along with all my other teammates. But all of a sudden, he called and told me one day, he told everybody, all my teammates, that he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and the only time he would talk to us was when he was feeling good. And so I used to trust, hey man, Big L, keep your head up, man. You're gonna be one of the ones that that make it through. Blah blah blah, blah blah blah. I was researching stuff for him and all this and that. Every time I talked to him, he was doing good. Then all of a sudden one day, bam, just say he was gone, just like that. I'm like, I just talked to him a few days ago, and everything sounded good. But rest in peace, Bobby Bowden. And
yeah, I almost got a little emotional watching all that stuff, and you hear some of the players' testimonies and other coaches too. Really, two tremendous individuals, both Bobby Bowden and J.R. Richard, a follower of the show, Richard Johnson. He was just commenting about how when he was 6, he saw J.R. Richard throw a 2-hitter in the Astrodome.
Right.
His parents took him for his birthday, and I was like, "What a hell of a story, man!"
Hey, thanks for that. Thanks for that.
Yeah, weekly listener, Richard Johnson.
Thanks, Richard. And you know what? To that point, I used to watch him all the time, too, when I was a kid. And I just remember that big number 50, man. He would just get up there and throw heat at 6'8". And again,
well, he said that
he was at the height of his career.
Dick said he reminded him of Nolan Ryan, that he had Nolan Ryan type stuff.
Let me tell you, he probably could have been better than Nolan Ryan. As much as I love Nolan Ryan.
The great debate.
Yeah, right. That's how great J.R. Richard. And you know what J.R. told me? He told me this off camera. He told me this at the banquet that we were at, where I presented him with the award a few months after he came into the show. He said the thing about it was, Greg, the thing about it, I felt like I was just coming to my own. I think he was like 29 or 30 years old. He said he was really just starting to get a feel. He could always throw 100 miles an hour, but he had the slider working. He had different pitches working. He was getting more command of the strike zone. He was understanding batters better. He was learning how to really prepare for batters better. He was really coming into the heart of his prime. And just like that, stroke took it just like that, just took it away. He tried to play after that, but to no avail. But may he rest in peace, J.R. Richard. Now, the Astros, and we're going to talk some NFL. We're going to talk plenty of NFL. Stay put. The Astros today, 3-1. That's 2 in a row, Eddie. Framber Valdez today, 6 innings pitched, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 8 strikeouts. The Astros, what's up?
They're handling business in Colorado. You know that explosive offense loves that thin air up there.
Yeah,
You know,
real talk.
the ball flies off the bat in Colorado. But, you know, Colorado's still, they're a good baseball team, but the Astros are just better. Now, they're settling in these new additions that they have to their team, and they're figuring out how they're going to use guys, and things are looking different out there. You know, there's some injury issues going on. Alex Bregman, you thought you were going to get him back in the fold. Not so fast. He's going to be out a little bit longer. Gurriel not ready to go, has an issue in his neck. So you're going to see some interesting things in the lineup. I saw Maldonado
Those are
playing.
big bats that's not in the lineup.
Absolutely,
right
I saw
Gurriel
Maldonado
is second in MLB in batting average.
without a doubt.
Michael
I
Brantley
mean,
is
he's
first.
your number 3 hitter. I mean, that's his spot. You're not going to put anybody else there when he's healthy the way he's batting this year. No doubt about that. But it's interesting to see the different combinations that Dusty Baker's coming up with for these guys and for these lineups. And it could even go a step further. We've even heard that they may experience or experiment with Yuli playing a little bit of third base. Who knows? But to see Maldonado play some first base, Taylor Jones out there, and then you've got Yordan Alvarez out in the outfield more often. I remember, you know, early on in his rookie year, you know, we thought he would never be a fit in the outfield, that you couldn't put him out there. He'd be a liability, or he'd be a ticking time bomb as far as when is he going to make that move that's going to blow out his knee or something like that. You know, would have Astros fans on the edge of their seats. But now that's kind of eased. That worry is no longer there. You see him out there moving, and while you realize he's a big guy, you feel like he has an understanding of how he needs to, you know, run and treat foul balls and stuff like that, so that he doesn't end up injured. The whole thing, you know, you really don't see teams do what the Astros did. Yeah, they went heavy into the trade, right into the trade deadline. They went hard and heavy to get the guys that they felt like they wanted and needed, and they definitely traded some important pieces while they were doing it. But I'm watching this team adjust on the fly.
Right.
I know they struggled when they got back from Los Angeles. A very emotional, tempers are high. You know, the environment is absolutely hostile. You know, they come back. They play late there in L.A. They come back, have another game in Minute Maid that night, in which they didn't seem like themselves. But since then, they've slowly kind of climbed back, and now they're playing baseball back to the way that we're used to seeing them play. It's just cool to see all the different combinations and different lineups that they're coming up with.
You're right. And you know what? The Twins lost a couple of games in the standings because of the Twins series. But, of course, like you said, they've gotten it back together against Colorado, obviously. But I also like what I'm saying from the Astros. Like I've said all season long, it's not going to be a question about their offense. They have enough. And then the thing about their offense, they have guys on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, up and down that lineup, even when Bregman comes back. These guys are battle tested, and they have that experience in the playoffs. I mean, Correa, who's always been a good playoff performer. I mean, Altuve, Bregman. I mean, Michael Brantley. I mean, so when these guys, when they get to the playoffs, because I do think they will get there. I think they will win their division over the A's. When they get there, they have that experience as far as a hitting team to where it's nothing they haven't seen. You have a manager in Dusty Baker, it's nothing he hasn't seen. And what I've always said since day one, now you're having that inconsistency out of the starting rotation. First, it was the relief pitching. So that's one thing about pitching, man. You never know. It's always, a lot of times, unless you're one of these big guns who's automatic, like a Scherzer or somebody to that ilk, I mean, you never know what you're going to get year in and year out, let alone game in and game out. But if they can get that pitching staff together as a whole to where they're just better than average in the playoffs, I think the Astros can win it all. I really do. Now, you have teams that's red hot right now, like the Yankees and like I said, the Phillies are getting on the roll. I still don't think that they're a World Series type team. You saw what the Dodgers did to them yesterday. The Dodgers picking up Scherzer, who blanked them 5-0 yesterday. I mean, there was a lot of rain that delayed a lot of that game, but the Phillies had won 8 in a row prior to that. Then the Dodgers went in there and said, okay, now you're going to play a real team, a real good team. We're really going to see what you're made of right now. Now, I don't know what the score is right now in that game, but the Phillies, a team that's red hot right now. Bryce Harper is a guy who I said a few weeks on the show, Tatis is my guy now. But
0-0 right now for LA and Philly.
Okay. Harper's still
Middle
my
of
guy.
the
And I
second.
really hadn't,
Middle of the second inning, 0-0.
Okay. And the thing about it is now Harper is in the MVP conversation again because all these weird stats that they have that pretty much proves that he's still a top 5 hitter in this league. Put it like this: Bryce Harper is still one of the best players in this game. And here's a guy who is crazy to say, who was underrated before we talk a lot of NFL. So stay put. Here's a guy that was supposedly overrated when he came into the league, and that's what I'm talking about how I like to follow the phenoms and things like that. Did the same thing with Bryce Harper. I did the same thing with Barry Bonds too. Did the same thing with Randy Moss. Did the same thing with LeBron. But so for the most part, but the guy does have an MVP to his credit. Probably would have had another one if he wouldn't have slipped on first base and and messed up his knee and missed the remainder of the season. Last year, during the strike shortened season, had some MVP type numbers, but only played like 20 games, of course, because of the COVID situation or whatever. So what he's doing now, and the thing about Bryce Harper, he only has 20 home runs, but he's still the most feared hitter in baseball. You do not see pitchers, he still sees the least amount of fastballs in the zone than any player in baseball. And it's been like that the last 3 or 4 years. So he doesn't have those, excuse me, and he doesn't have those opportunities. He only has like 40-something RBIs, 45 RBIs, which is low when you have guys like Tatis. Obviously, if Tatis and Ronald Acuna Jr. were still healthy, of course, they're the front runners for the MVP. If Tatis comes back and just plays the remainder of the games, he's going to win the MVP in the National League. But Bryce Harper, what he's doing, he's putting Philadelphia on his back. And it's so fun to see the city of Philadelphia when they have something they can root for. I mean, they can be really, really, really raucous and really into it when they really get behind their team. But what he's doing, Bryce Harper, he's just a guy right now. He's a team player. All he wants to do is get on base. He wants to do whatever it takes. He's going to always be up there in walks. He wants to do whatever it takes to get on base and help his team win. And again, he's still the most feared hitter in baseball, so he could take you for a 3-run shot at any time if you throw a ball to his liking. And he's more selective on pitches. He's not a wild horse like he was when he first came into the league, even though he's always been ultra competitive. But he's just smarter right now. And here's a guy that making contact with the baseball, and he's just putting the team on his back right now and just leading by example. So he supposedly went from overrated to now almost underrated. I mean, that's how crazy it is. But I like what I'm saying from him right now, and I hope he keeps it up because
it had a lot to do with the contract and just at the
There you
time
go.
not living up to it. But now definitely he's right in the thick of a National League MVP race that you got to feel like with the injuries that you mentioned, Acuna, Tatis, these guys, it's wide open. I mean, because you never know how the voters and the people responsible for picking the MVPs, you don't know how they're going to weigh the games missed, how they're going to penalize those players for not being on the field, and you don't know how much weight they're going to give to the players who were out there and still having these great seasons. If they end up, if you could look at, Tatis and Acuna and Bryce Harper, and you look at their season statistics, and they're all pretty close, but yet Harper played, in every single game or close to it. I could
and the
see.
Phillies win their division, even though it's not
Yeah,
a great
with the
division.
Mets backsliding the way that they are, that
Yeah.
division's wide open. I could easily see Bryce Harper winning an MVP race and sort of bringing justification,
Right.
even if it's just a little bit, to the deal that he signed. What was it, 2 years ago? To that deal,
And now
that
the thing about
huge
it,
deal.
Right. And the thing about it, the Nationals went on and won the World Series a year after he left. And that was just I mean, that's just how it went down. The Nats haven't done anything since. As a matter of fact, they did a fire sale and got rid of all their players. But they were able to do that. But the thing I've always liked about Bryce before we move on is I've always liked his swagger for one. I've always liked his flair. I've always liked the fact that they say his teammates love him. They say his teammates love him. He's a fun guy to be around. But he says all the right things, and he doesn't dog anybody out. But he's always been a guy that says what's on his mind, and so he's not going to mince any words. But the thing about it, he didn't make the All-Star team the last 4 years. He didn't make it this year. He didn't complain anything like that. He said, "Okay, Bob, it is what it is." And even though he had some numbers where he probably should have made the All-Star team, he just went home, got some rest, has had back spasms, and that's what it is. But he didn't make a big fuss about anything like that, and he just goes out and plays ball, man, and plays ball the right way. Every time that guy is playing, I want to watch the Phillies play. I want to see Bryce Harper at bat. I mean, it's just been like that ever since he's come into the league, and it hasn't changed one bit. And he's only 28, not going to be 29 till October. So I like what I'm seeing in that regard. Now, what do you think, moving on, what do you think about Deshaun Watson and his availability or non-availability with the Houston Texans?
Well, it seems like every day you're kind of pulled back and forth. You're not sure, is Deshaun possibly coming back in the fold? Is he, maybe pondering the possibility of playing for the Texans this year? Are the Texans themselves, after being reported to be completely done with Deshaun Watson, are they indeed still pondering keeping him around? And then, the depth chart comes out today, and Deshaun Watson is planted firmly at 4th on the depth chart.
Are you serious?
And he's not going to travel and play in the first preseason game against Green Bay. There's so many different ways you can look at this, Greg, but ultimately, I do believe that they are open to the possibility that Deshaun Watson could come back in the fold and play one season or even multiple seasons again with the Houston Texans. And I think it's just Nick Caserio keeping every option open.
Yeah.
Him being 4th on the depth chart, to me, that doesn't show how the Texans feel about him. That just shows that where he has to be while he has all this stuff swirling around him and hanging over his head with these 22 lawsuits and 10 possible criminal complaints. So the Texans are keeping him right there. But I don't see, like some people say, I don't see a turning of the back to Deshaun Watson from the Houston Texans. And I don't see the same thing from Deshaun Watson. Now, when you're out, there's been a couple instances at practice where he's distanced himself from the team. And I truly
playing free safety on scout
this
team.
is speculation here, but I truly believe that Deshaun Watson being around his teammates may very well be conflicted about how he feels and about where he wants to go from here in his career. I mean, when nobody's playing football and you don't have to see these guys every day, it's real easy to say, hey, man, I want to go over here. But, it was just maybe a year ago whenever Deshaun Watson cried on television and said how thankful he was to the Houston Texans for his, massive contract and how important it was to try to bring a championship to the Texans organization and to the city and for his teammates as well. And now that he's out there and he's kind of rubbing shoulders with these guys and he sees that, whether he's there or not, the show will go on. True players and true competitors, it's hard not to jump on that train. Even if it's not the ride you wanted to take, you know what? A ride is better than no ride.
Right.
And I think Deshaun Watson and the Houston Texans may slowly but surely, like we talked about before, many shows ago, Greg, may slowly but surely start to realize that their best bet or the best outcome is to find each other again.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you're talking about a franchise quarterback right here. And like you said, they're trying to let things play out in the courts and things of that sort. Now, as far as him being 4th,
now I wouldn't get your hopes up or anything.
No,
but
I'm
telling you, the possibility is there, and anybody who tells you that it isn't, they're being narrow-minded.
Right. Well, you know what, too? Think about it. I mean, of course, when he missed those 4 or 5 days in camp, then all of a sudden he comes back. And, of course, I'm speculating. But my thing was the Texans probably thought that they had found a trade partner at that time. So we're going to hold him out so he doesn't get injured. And all of a sudden, the trade fell through. So let's put him back on the field. And we really want to keep him. But if he really wants to go that bad, if we can get what we really should be able to get for him, I mean, it is what it is. But I think when he was out for that period of time, maybe a trade that they thought was imminent turned out to be not so imminent after all. So now he's back in the fold, and they're going to, I don't know what other teams are doing because Roger Goodell still hasn't ruled on anything yet. No. So it's like, you know what, and I hadn't heard anything from Deshaun Watson. So I'm through speculating about Deshaun Watson and where his head is.
Then you see, it maybe just in passing, but him and Nick Caserio having conversations on the football field.
There it is.
Deshaun Watson still present in team meetings in the quarterback room, helping the young quarterbacks understand what essentially is the same offense that Tim Kelly ran last year with just a little bit of a new wrinkle when you bring in Pep Hamilton and all his, wondrous knowledge that he has when it comes to NFL offenses. I really like what he can add to what Tim Kelly brings to the table, but Deshaun Watson certainly understands and knows that offense through and through. And he's been a big help to Tyrod Taylor and to the other young quarterbacks, Driscoll and Mills in that quarterback room. So that's encouraging to hear. Ultimately, it's just all going. I think it's all going to rest on Deshaun Watson. If he were to have that bury the hatchet type meeting with the Texans, with the owner. Cal McNair and Janice and with Nick Caserio, and when he could really see that now that Nick Caserio is here, that the Texans are an organization that are only going to make moves that are going to better the organization, not strip it down and make it worse.
Yeah.
Now that he can see that, he can feel comfortable in knowing that nobody's ever going to make the right decision every single time.
True.
But you want football people in football positions, and you want football people that you can trust.
That makes astute decisions.
When you had Bill O'Brien being a general manager, he had never been or ever shown the ability to be a general manager. Mm-hmm. So that was bound to turn out bad. There was no way that was ever going to turn out good. Either he was going to become the next Bill Belichick or it was going to go bad. And guess where everybody's money was at, and guess what ended up happening? It went bad. But I think when you know football and you're around somebody who knows football and you see decisions being made, you see things happening on the football field that are improving, the way things work and the way things have worked at NRG and on that practice field and in those training camps that Watson's been a part of for the past 4 years, then it's going to start to work things in his mind and start to give him and plant these seeds of ideas that, hey, maybe things here in Houston aren't as bad as I thought they were.
Right.
And he's already somewhere where if he were to accept the fan base and, apologize and come out, I guarantee you this fan base and this organization will welcome back with open arms as long as, and this is the big if hanging over everything, as long as these civil suits get settled and there are no criminal cases filed or criminal charges filed and then subsequently convicted against Deshaun Watson.
Bingo. And see, that's the holdup with a lot of this right now because, again, I've said all along, I think the Texans would love to have him back because quarterbacks like that do not fall off trees. But I agree. Time heals all wounds. And if you're Deshaun Watson, after he continues and he gets to really be around his teammates, like you said, and really start liking a lot of these guys and realizing, okay, this guy's pretty talented. I think he'll be a keeper and blah, 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 blah. You would think Deshaun Watson would want to make amends for the situation that he's put himself in right now and finish out his career in Houston, because if he leaves Houston under these terms, that's always going to hang over his head. I mean, even though people are still going to bring this up for years to come, I think more so if he leaves Houston and when people reflect back on his career in Houston, as great as his career was up to the point of these civil cases, that's what people are going to remember.
And nobody will really know if it was it really, the hiring of Jack Easterby and Cal McNair not consulting Deshaun Watson, and was that really the reason that he wanted to leave, or did he take advantage of an organization that was, primed to give him anything he wanted in a contract because he was, the guy that they had been looking for since, the inception of the organization. He was the guy they've been looking for, the one single guy, that quarterback that every team needs. Houston found him, and he knew he had Houston in a position to give him that contract. Was he keeping it a secret that he had all these issues that he knew were building up behind that? If he could just sign the contract and then force his way out, maybe he can get out before he had to deal with any of those issues. Yeah. If you don't get these issues settled and you don't figure out a way to smooth things over with the Houston Texans, then maybe you're right. Maybe that's what follows you to your next, your next endeavor, your next team. People will always wonder, what was Deshaun really trying to accomplish with that? Because the Texans really gave him everything they wanted. They gave him a contract that was, top of the league. It gave him a no trade clause, which is not typical of NFL contracts. Usually, that you don't see that for only a handful of guys get those, and he was able to get that and to say all the things that you said receiving that contract, just to turn around and want out only a few months later. It's fishy, right, and you got to get things right. You got to get things squared away and smoothed out. Even if you're going to move on, some type of reconciliation between Deshaun Watson and the Texans, it would be all the better for Deshaun Watson moving forward.
Right, and also for the Texans, because obviously he's a great quarterback. But I think what Deshaun saw too, again, I think he saw some of these guys walk out the door, were booted out the door. Guys like DeAndre Hopkins, J.J. Watt leaving, and he saw a lot of the talent dissipating as well, along with the things that he didn't like as far as the way the organization was supposedly, allegedly handling their business, especially in regards to their inclusion of him or non-inclusion of him. The same thing with Aaron Rodgers. We see he's back in the fold now playing. I told you, money talks. Money talks. And I knew he would be back. At least I thought strongly that he would be back. And Deshaun, of course, didn't want to get fined at $50,000 a day. But I think there was an accumulation of things where he really started to distance himself from the Texans. And like you said, though, now that he's going through these issues and now that he's out there practicing with his team, and maybe he wants to help resurrect the Texans. I don't know, but obviously to this point, a deal has not been made, and so we'll see what happens moving forward. But speaking of the Texans,
he keeps showing up, and as long as he's there, that there's always going to be just a small sliver of hope that even if he doesn't stay here, that it ends up working out in the better for both parties. Because truthfully, that's what we all want. I'm a big fan of Deshaun Watson.
Come on, man.
I hope it works out for.
I vouched for him before the draft.
Works out
to be
for
the
him,
first pick in the draft,
and as well for the Houston Texans. So
there it is.
Hoping it works out for both parties involved.
Likewise. Now we're going to stay on the AFC South for a second. I'm going to get your take on a couple of teams. But first of all, I want to give a shout out to the Hall of Fame inductees. Jimmy Johnson. I probably won't name everybody right here. What I won't. Jimmy Johnson, Peyton Manning, just to name a few. Drew Pearson, Dallas Cowboys, finally got in. Love his energy when he's up there. Of course, I love Jimmy Johnson's energy and how he talked about. You can see why he was such a great coach and a great motivator. And started all the way back from the University of Miami, won those 2 Super Bowls with the Cowboys, probably would have won more. Maybe should have won 3 in a row. Should have beat San Francisco. Sorry, Daryl. Should have beat San Francisco that year when the Niners win, when Dion was there, if they wouldn't have fell behind the 8 ball so quick with those turnovers. But after the end of that game, if you were really watching that entire game, it was in the mud. And the Cowboys should have three-peated that year. They almost came back and got San Francisco that game. As great as San Francisco was with Jerry Rice and Steve Young and Ricky Waters and Dion, who won Defensive MVP that year, who actually ultimately got them over the hump to that Super Bowl because he was Dion was special. Dion was special. But I still think the Cowboys, they should have won that game. They didn't. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. They didn't. But love Jimmy Johnson and how he talked about, how all these guys talked about, not only thank people for furthering their career or helping them throughout their career, but just life in general. But Jimmy Johnson, I love the way he just talked about how, essentially, he just talked about how he liked bringing the best out of people. If he saw something in someone, he made sure they reached their potential when they were under his guidance as a coach.
Yeah, what could have been, what could have been if he'd have stuck around in Dallas.
Oh, my God. He probably would have had 4 or 5 Super Bowls with the Cowboys.
And do you think they would have ever got that elusive three-peat? I know I talked with Richard Johnson at work about it, and he thought that, there was a chance, but by the time they got to go for that 3rd Super Bowl in a row, Emmett was banged up. Yeah, Emmett was banged up that year, They used him a lot.
Well, then they did get one the next year, and that shows you.
Right.
Barry Switzer came back and got one with Jimmy's team. But if Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones' ego wouldn't have gotten in the way, little alcohol involved from what I understand, and love Jerry Jones. But I'm sure Jerry regrets that one as well. But I think they've mended fences since then. They went to Arkansas, was teammates at Arkansas, the University of Arkansas together. But Jimmy Johnson, man, what a great, great coach, college and pro. He's one of the reasons why I wanted to go to the University of Miami out of high school. They didn't recruit me. Ended up working out better for me, in my opinion, going to Ohio State. But I wanted to go to Miami bad. I used to love watching them on TV, man. Michael Irvin. All those guys. I'm talking about the Blaze brothers. I can go on and on and on. Jerome Brown on defense. You name it. I'm talking about I wanted to go play for the University of Miami. And, of course, they started recruiting in my school. My boy Grady Cabinets. They started recruiting in my school the next year after I left. But I didn't care about it. I'd already had mine. But Jimmy Johnson, great coach. Of course, Peyton Manning, the great Peyton Manning. Of course, he was very, very thoughtful and very well prepared up there. And
what did you think about the bust? Did you see the bust of Manning? The guy's getting a lot of flack. It was It made his head look awfully long. There were some cone head comments. You know, these guys who do the bust, man, I do not envy their position at all, man, because
Yeah.
these guys are in a tight spot because you wanna make a piece of art that embodies who the person was, but ultimately, even if you try something risky, like you look at Jimmy Johnson's, it's stoic, it's
Yeah.
simple,
Right.
looks
Right.
like Jimmy.
Right.
But Peyton, they kind of tried to make that face that he made when he was evaluating the defense, and I think they were off just a little bit, man. Peyton looked. If you haven't seen it, guys, go check it out.
Blue,
The
blue.
bus for Peyton Manning,
I'm gonna
Omaha.
check it out.
The
Yeah, yeah,
bus,
Omaha,
the
Omaha.
bus. It was causing a stir up and some discussion amongst people who saw it. Let us
Well,
know
I'm
what you
sure.
think in the comments if you check it out.
Well, I'm sure Peyton took it all in stride. Here's a guy who posts fun at himself. I'm talking about very self-deprecating. And again, you're talking about a family. You're talking about a family that I would love to hang out with. Just let me spend one night at the Manning household. I'm talking
Damn it.
about with Mama Manning, Archie. I'm talking about that just seems like a great family, man. They seem like a real cool family from New Orleans. But I love I love when Peyton when he was a kid. You knew Peyton was going to be special when they showed that clip of him when he was a kid, when he was standing behind it. I mean, when he was standing in front of his dad, and they were interviewing him, and the reporter said, "Peyton, who is your favorite quarterback?" He had the wherewithal at that time, at 3 years old, to reach back behind him and say, "My dad." They're like, "Peyton, who is your favorite quarterback?" "My dad." But hey, I love Peyton Manning, and I like the fact he took that shot, that slide shot at Tom Brady too. Was all in fun, but pretty much essentially saying, "Get your ass off Twitter." But it was all in fun though. He was just joking with him. Made the joke about, of course, Ray Lewis would still be doing this speech at that time, and I just love listening.
There's no doubt about that.
I just I just love listening to Peyton Manning, man, and he may be the commissioner. He talked about the evolution of the game, keeping the game fun, and essentially that's what he was saying, and making sure you continue to do the right things as far as the game. And I thought the NFL, I thought Goodell, in some respects, has done that by, for one, changing the number rule, where guys can wear numbers that normally couldn't wear numbers at certain positions. So that's keeping the fun into the game and things like that. I like Calvin Johnson, talked about how he played with pain, and he pretty much just throughout his entire career played with a lot of pain. But you're talking about a beast on the field. I mean, he said after his rookie year, during his rookie year, he hurt his back. He didn't even think he would be able to walk again. And next thing you know, he came back his second year and said, "Hey, I'm going to be the best receiver in the league." And that's what he did. I mean, the guy will get 100-yard games routinely on a terrible team in Detroit. Same thing that Barry Sanders had to go through. But I like what I heard from Calvin Johnson, and he talked about how, of course, people should lay low on these opioids and things like that, and maybe look more. I don't think he said the word
To a
marijuana,
holistic
yeah,
approach.
Yeah. Right,
There
right,
you
right,
go.
Right. Charles Woodson, of course, being Charles Woodson. So all these guys are great players. Alan Faneca, Bill Nunn from the Steelers, who, if it wasn't for Bill Nunn with the Steelers probably wouldn't have never even gotten those 4 Super Bowls. You think about, I think Donnie Shell wasn't trying to. That 1974 draft, Lynn Swann, Starworth, Mike Webster, who else? Was it Franco Harris? But you had 4 Hall of Famers. Then you have Donnie Shell. Well, 5 now with Donnie Shell. I mean, think about it. Bill Nunn was the architect of that. He was the guy scouting all that talent at a lot of these black schools. Just think about it. If he wouldn't have gotten a lot of those players to help build that team, the Steelers wouldn't be recognized as they are right now. As great as Chuck Noll was, of course, once he got the players to Pittsburgh, of course, it was up to the coaches and Chuck Noll, the great Chuck Noll, rest his soul, to actually coach these guys up. But Bill Nunn flies under the radar for me as far as what he was able to do with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I mean, so great job. Hey, all those guys, if there's anybody I missed, I'm sure it is, but kudos to those guys. Speaking of Peyton Manning, his former team, the Colts, now they're without Carson Wentz.
In a world of hurt. Now, when we initially heard the news about the injury, there's a lot of speculation that it was going to be a lingering injury. It was something that may require surgery. Then they weren't going to have surgery. Ultimately, he ended up having the surgery.
Right.
But now what I'm hearing is the timetable for his return is supposedly sometime early in the season. They're not even going to rule out the preseason yet, but most likely it's going to be sometime early in the beginning of the season.
Now they're saying he may be back for the first game.
It's an every
Quentin
evolving
Nelson, right.
scenario, but still, it just goes to show the moment that news broke, like immediately, Indy was in a panic because they don't have any options behind Carson Wentz
Let me stop you right quick on
that's
that.
not named Andrew Luck,
Not true, true, true. But you know a
and
guy.
he's not coming back.
He's not walking through that door. Speaking of Andrew
He's
Luck,
not.
you're talking about a guy that just walked away and said bye-bye and hasn't looked back. I mean, Andrew Luck is like, he has disappeared into the night. But, and was a great quarterback.
Boy, but if he did, that'd be one hell of a story.
I mean, it really would. But obviously, he's not even thinking about coming back right now. He's well off.
Now, there's been
financially
Phillip
secure.
Rivers talk, but not to the Colts.
Yeah, right. But the thing about it, you know a guy that I said, well, of course, Jacob Eason, who was at Georgia. And speaking of Georgia, NCAA coaches top poll, Bama, of course, number one, Clemson, OU, then my Buckeyes to start the season as far as the coaches poll. Bama is always number one. Just for the next 5 or 10 years, just you don't even have to, okay, who's number two, who's number three? I mean, you got to give it to him, man. Bama is a machine. And so we'll see. And my Buckeyes actually, before I get on to what I was talking about the Colts, my Buckeyes actually got a top quarterback out of high school that's going there this year, Quinn Ewers. They say he's the most highly touted quarterback. He decommitted from Texas. He's skipping his senior year in high school, signed with my Buckeyes. He's in camp right now. And they say he is slinging it around. And they say he's the most highly touted quarterback since Andrew Luck and Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields, who we're going to talk about in a second as well. But you know a guy that I was telling you with the Colts, who I liked at UT, who I thought was going to be a good NFL player, and maybe as a backup, but who the Colts are liking right now?
Sam Ellinger.
Man. I like Sam Ellinger.
Yeah, I mean, he could be one of those guys that you get him in an NFL system, you get him around a guy that knows NFL concepts and a hell of a quarterback coach, and then all of a sudden things can pop off. I mean, Patrick Mahomes, though, everybody saw the talent, so you couldn't doubt. I mean, he had first-round talent in his body, but, it wasn't like Texas Tech was winning any national championships. With Patrick Mahomes. It took getting this guy into the right system to really develop him and make people say, wow, this is what the guy really can do. We're not going to go there with Sam Ellinger just yet, but, he may be just a perfect fit for this scheme, and he may be become the best quarterback that he could be in that system. And whether that's a starting caliber quarterback, whether that's a, perennial, long-time journeyman backup, I don't know. But coming into the league, the ceiling for Sam Ellinger probably didn't seem like it was that high. He could be one of these guys that takes the route of like a guy before him at Texas, Garrett Gilbert, where you just bounce around here and there. You're fighting for a third or fourth spot, but hey, he's getting an opportunity. He's making the most of it, and there's no doubt about it. Frank Reich is one of the best guys a young quarterback can learn under.
Mm-hmm. And you know why I've always liked Sam Ellinger is the fact that no matter what UT, no matter how they look like, no matter how the other players were playing, he always kept those guys in the game.
He's a gamer.
I love his competitive. Yeah, that's the perfect word for him. He's a gamer. I love his competitive spirit, and I think he's going to be a damn good backup quarterback. And if he gets his opportunity, he may turn out to be a damn good starting quarterback. But speaking of that, and we may jump from the NFC to the AFC and back and forth a little bit right here before we get out of here. But what do you think about? Now, the Eagles, speaking of quarterback, you have Jalen Hurts. Of course, they're without Devontae Smith right now. But the Eagles, what are their chances? Of course, it all hinges on Jalen Hurts and how he's going to evolve. But again, you need Jalen Reagor to step up. You need Devontae Smith back healthy. And they need to give Miles Sanders a damn ball.
Hey. Baby Barkley? Isn't that what they used to call him? Miles Sanders, yes. Baby Barkley?
Yes, from Penn State.
He's definitely one of those guys that the fantasy players are going to be keeping a close eye on. Miles Sanders, when things are clicking good, and they're giving him the football, not only on the ground, but using him in the passing game is where he's most effective, I think. Big things could start happening for Mr. Miles Sanders.
Yeah, and you know what? Jalen Hurts, he just needs to continue to get better from inside the pocket. Of course, if they utilize him right, of course they're going to get him outside the pocket. But I think Jalen Hurts is going to be a damn good quarterback. But, of course, he needs those weapons around him. And, of course, the offensive line has to get better. But I'm looking forward to seeing what they do.
Well, Andre Dillard's got to develop, man. Andre Dillard, the guy they jumped up in front of the Houston Texans to draft, left tackle.
Yeah.
They use him at guard, but still they need this guy to develop and go ahead and come into his own maybe a little bit earlier than most offensive linemen would. I mean, they would like him to be sort of what Lael Collins was to the Cowboys. You know,
Right.
a guy who comes in, you got a veteran at left tackle, you got a veteran at right tackle, but here, come in, play some guard, learn the ropes, and when you're ready, young grasshopper, we'll kick you out on the edge, and
Right.
you'll be out there for 8 or 9 years.
Right. There it is.
So far, Dillard has flashed, but he's had injuries here and there, but he hasn't shown that he's going to be that guy. They need him to be that guy if they're going to have that kind of success in the running game, and if they're going to be able to keep Jalen Hurts from running around like a chicken with his head cut off,
Right.
trying to make plays. They need to be solid. And it starts with those guys. It starts with Johnson and having a young Dillard actually step up this season.
There it is, to go along with Miles Sanders. And, yeah, you have to depend on the running game to take some of that pressure off of Jalen Hurts. And, again, Jalen Reagor, who I saw some flashes from last year, I'm not as down on him as a lot of people are. I mean, I saw some flashes. Of course, he can become more consistent. But you get Devontae Smith back, which they should have him back by the start of the regular season. That gives you that explosiveness, and that gives Jalen Hurts a weapon that he can throw the ball to, of course, and stand in that same division for a quick second. I mean, the Giants, they have Saquon coming back. Saquon, in my opinion, when he's healthy, he's the best running back in the game. I mean, so you're talking about – I never forget his freshman year. You're talking about a guy when I watched them play against Ohio State when he was a true freshman and I didn't know who he was. And they kept giving him the ball. I was like, who in the hell is this number 26? They kept saying freshman Saquon Barkley. I say, he's going to be great. He is going to be great. Of course, he ultimately ended up being the second pick in the draft. I mean, but I saw at that game I saw against Ohio State, the freshman, I don't even think he had 50 yards rushing. But just the runs he had, I say, that guy is going to be special. But you have him coming back into the fold from that knee injury now. They brought him along slowly, and he seems to be 100% healthy. But now you give the quarterback
Jones?
David Jones.
Daniel, yeah.
Daniel Jones. You give Daniel Jones that weapon out of the backfield that you can throw the ball to, and of course he has to he has to cut down on the turnovers. But you give him that option in the backfield with Saquon to take some of that pressure off him. He has Sterling Shepard and some other receivers outside that they picked up.
Yeah, the young
Galladay and
Tooney out of Florida.
Yeah, you have the tight end. What's the tight end name?
Ertz, and they also have.
They have Ertz?
Not Ertz. I'm sorry. They also have Goddard.
Goddard and the guy from Mississippi State, from Mississippi, starts with an E. Ingram.
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? I was thinking about the Eagles. That's where you got me
Ingram.
confused. And Goddard, he plays for the Eagles
Okay.
too.
Okay.
You're talking about Evan Ingram for the
Evan
Giants.
Ingram. He's
I don't
the
know
guy wearing
why
the
I thought we
88.
were still talking about the Eagles.
Nah, it's all
When you say tight ends, and I think tight ends in the NFC East, the first thing that comes to mind is Zach Ertz and Dallas Goddard. The tandem, those two guys. The mismatches they create in Philly.
Well, that should bode well.
I
for
mean,
Jalen
Goddard
Hurts.
could
Speaking of Philly,
start for 22 other NFL teams, but he stays behind Ertz.
Yeah.
Just
I know.
waiting. If they
Ertz is a
eventually,
model of consistency.
yeah, if they eventually move on when he's out there, if they eventually move on from Ertz, Goddard will definitely fill his shoes. But yeah, Ingram is
Evan Ingram
definitely
plays like a wide receiver.
he's definitely a guy that has flashed big play capability. They love him down in the red
Yeah,
zone.
he drops the ball every now and then.
He
but
just has a propensity
He has a
to
drop set.
disappear in
He
games.
does. He does.
I had him on the fantasy roster. I think there was one stretch he went through where like 3 games he couldn't crack 5 points, which means
Wow.
he's not getting multiple
Catches and
catches.
yards,
He's
right.
not getting any yards after the catch. But then he'd blow up, have a 2 touchdown
But
game.
that's what I'm saying. The thing, I mean, he has talent like a wide receiver. So Evan Ingram is a guy that they should lean on more, especially for a young quarterback like Daniel Jones, and get him the ball and let him go to work. Just like you have O.J. Howard coming back in Tampa. Just think about how big that move is for Tom Brady out there in Tampa. When you have a tight end like we talked about with the Cowboys, and if they have a tight end that can stretch the field and do some things to take some of the pressure off the run game as well, helping the run game, blocking of course, but to open things up in that passing game. So Evan Ingram and the Giants and the Ravens.
Real quick on the
ahead.
Giants, the thing about it is, and I know they want to use that tight end, and I just want to add on to what you're saying there. I know they want to use him. The thing about it is, when you don't have Saquon Barkley and you don't have that consistent running attack, and then on top of that, you have an offensive line that it took them a while to get going. I mean, Who's that? Who's the big guy they signed from New England? I'm drawing a blank on his name right now. Big left tackle.
From New England?
Yeah, they signed him before last season. You can't remember?
Oh, you talking about
I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on his
no,
name.
I don't
The
really know him
Texans,
like
the
that.
Texans were in on him, and that he ended up going.
Herrera or something like that?
No, no, he ended up going.
I just threw a name out
No,
there.
he ended up going to.
Sound like
I'm telling you,
Pull it
whenever I
up. We
see
got
it
time.
here,
Okay, we good.
whenever I see it, I'm gonna laugh. But basically, Daniel Jones didn't have elite protection. He didn't even hardly have adequate protection
Right.
on the offensive line. So it's really hard to get him going whenever he's not comfortable back there. And then on top of that, you don't have the main cog in your rushing attack. You have no consistent rushing attack. Teams knew what Daniel Jones was going to do, and they were keying
And I like Daniel Jones.
on the check down. So he really was not put into place for success.
Right.
Nate Solder is the guy I was thinking of. It took Nate
Nate
Solder.
Solder. Okay,
It took
Nate
Nate
Solder.
Solder a while to get
Solder.
settled in and start playing well. And all along, all people are looking at and focusing on is that Daniel Jones is not having success. He's not living up to where he was drafted. Should New York look in another direction? Should they trade for another quarterback? Should they look at Deshaun Watson? Let me tell you, right now, New York, they are sold on Daniel Jones. I don't know how long that's going to last. But if you get all these pieces back, you've got a big guy like Kenny Golladay out on the edge. You got Saquon Barkley taking taking the handoffs. And, a young Evan Ingram, and some young receivers to add to the mix. If he can't have success with these guys, then I think they're going to go into full-on panic mode and trying to find a replacement. And we may end up talking about the Giants being a team that could try to get in on one of these NFL superstar quarterback sweepstakes that are going to be held at some point in time in the next season or two.
Okay. And you know what? As far as Daniel Jones, I like what I've seen from him so far. I mean, the guy is very athletic. You've seen him take out and outrun the defense a number of times last year. One time he tripped. I mean, the turf monster got him, and he was in the wide open and just fell. But took a couple to the house, took a couple of more to the house in the running game, and he can pass the football. So he's going, again, like we're saying if Saquon comes back and when he adds that balance, I mean, the things that Saquon can do, and that first-round pick they got Tony out of Florida.
Yes, and now
oh, man, he's nice.
And
he can set him up in great field position.
Kadarius Tony
is nice.
Struggled early on in camp, but you see this at a young receiver. Just adjusting to the physicality of the NFL game and what's expected of you, it's totally different.
It is.
You'll see a lot of receivers. What's the number one thing you see receivers what happens to young receivers when they get drafted at the NFL level? They get these little nagging injuries in training camp. The NFL is a much more physical game.
To your point?
I think about Henry Ruggs last year. As elite as he is athletically, it's going to take him a year or two for that body to build up a resistance to where he can withstand the punishment that you're going to take being an NFL wide receiver. Some of these guys have never been hit. I mean, never really been hit. You know what I'm talking about, Greg?
Exactly
like smelling salts hit. They never been hit.
With Atlanta,
too fast.
I was in camp with Atlanta, hey man, one of the first things I noticed in one-on-one drills and 7-on-7 drills, team drills, were how fast and quick those defensive backs were. I'm talking about it was a different animal in the pros, even though I was getting mine in camp. But that's a story for another day. But you definitely notice, and the physicality, like you said, the speed and the physicality, even if the physicality was simply just getting up and bump and run and just getting some hands on you. I mean, it's just physical, man. Now, luckily, and maybe unluckily too, I never got hit like that in the NFL because I only played in 2 preseason games.
Right.
But man, I'm talking about, you look at a guy like Rashad Bateman in Baltimore, you have Lamar Jackson, who just reported to camp from the COVID list. Now he has Rashad Bateman out. Now, along with Marquise Brown and Sammy Watkins, that tandem was looking nice. And it's still going to be nice. They're saying he's going to be back by the start of the year. But you have Lamar Jackson with a myriad of weapons he can throw to now.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you a guy not to sleep on in Baltimore who's going to end up making that team. I'll be surprised if he doesn't. But a guy that went to Ohio State by the name of Benjamin Victor. And I think he was now he was a late round draft pick, 4th or 5th round.
No, Benjamin Victor cut by the Ravens. I'm just playing. I'm just playing.
What?
Got him.
Hey, well, I'll say this. I think he's going to be a guy now. When he went to Ohio State, he was highly recruited out of Florida, I think it was, and had some big moments. Had a last-second touchdown catch and run against Penn State a few years back, and big-time talent. has a case of the dropsies every now and then, likes to body catch way too often. But as far as the speed and the outright talent, I mean, I can see him getting into some situations with Baltimore where Baltimore is like, hey, man, we got to find in this guy.
And just like we mentioned, I mean, I pull up the Ravens page, and the first story, Bateman out weeks with a leg injury. What did we just talk about with these guys?
Soft tissue injury.
It happens. It looks like it's more towards the serious side than the non-serious side. If you look at the amount of pain he was in.
They say he won't be back to the season.
Yeah,
and that's a shame because you really want Lamar to get that continuity with these receivers, Sammy Watkins, Rashad Bateman, who's going to play a big role in that offense. And you really want Lamar, who we know needs to evolve better as a passer and outside the numbers. You really want him to get the timing down with guys like that. Yeah. And he still will. I mean, he's doing it with Sammy Watkins and these guys, Benjamin Victor, and these other guys. There's another guy they drafted in that draft too at wide receiver. But so they've revamped that wide receiver core. And of course, what Baltimore is going to have to do, they're going to have to lean on the run game. I'm telling you, this is a breakout year for my boy J.K. Dobbins for Ohio State. He's going to be a superstar in this league, and they need to give him the ball. And Lamar Jackson needs to lean on him more in the passing game as well. I said it all last year. Finally, the last 3 or 4 games last year, they started doing what I had been asking for leading up to that point. It's like, get J.K. Dobbins involved. That bodes well for your offense. It opens things up. So I think that will help Lamar Jackson. Of course, you know what they're going to be on the defense side of the ball. But I think the Bears, Justin Fields, the way they say he's looking at camp, he may be in the fold more sooner than later.
I don't know. They say Andy Dalton has a new visor and that he's looking as fierce as he's ever looked. And
it's just a matter of time.
Without a doubt. I mean, still, I think I'd put Andy Dalton out there just to make sure that everybody else on the offense can keep Justin protected, make sure that there's not any weak points. If anything does go wrong, you know, it'll be him that you're wheeling off the field in a gurney and not Justin Fields. Hey, as you know, as tongue in cheek as I say that, the reality of it is they'll probably put him out there to see what's going to happen, and if anything bad happens to him or if he gets injured, they're like, hey, that's what we brought you here for, so that you could be a placeholder and take that injury that we don't want our future to have.
If he finds out that that's why they want him to play, he'll probably be like, hey, I'd rather stay on the sideline. It's better to be a live chicken than a dead duck.
Yeah. But if he's going to die, he's going to die a millionaire. That's what he's cashing checks for.
Hey, you know what? Speaking to that, a lot of these guys, once they've been in the league for a while and they know that they're not going to be this Hall of Fame quarterback, a lot of times I don't really think they even want to get in the game. A lot of these backup quarterbacks, now I'm not saying they're not competitors.
They're like, damn it, you're going to catch me working, man. I'm not used to working.
They like that money. They like that paycheck, and they don't want the pressure. They don't want everything. I mean, because a quarterback, you know the pressure that falls on the quarterback. And once they get to a certain point in their career, they're like, man, just let me make the team. I'll be the second string, third string. You can make me inactive, whatever. As long as that check clear every 2 weeks,
yeah, they want to cash a player's check performing a coach's job description. You know, basically that's what the backup quarterback ends up being. You know, I mean, think about Matt Schaub, and you know, he cashed checks for a while after we thought he could physically, you know, perform the job. But hey, more power to him. Whatever if somebody wants to give me that job, I'm going to take it. You know, and same thing for Andy Dalton. The thing about Andy is, you know, here's a guy, he's not too far removed from having success. No, he's not the guy, but if they feel like they want to take their time with Fields and maybe, you know, set a timetable for sometime between weeks 1 and 8, you know, whenever he's ready, I think Andy's the perfect guy. You know, I mean, yeah, you know, everybody wants
to, how he looks in the preseason.
Everybody wants to get things, you want to get him out there, but let's just say he doesn't have a full grasp of the playbook yet. Let's just say that he's not 100% ready. You don't have to put him out there.
You don't have to. I totally agree with that.
It's not going to be, people aren't going to be putting brown bags over their head because Andy Dalton's out there. No, he's going to be out there running the offense. It's going to look like, you know, you'll be able to win some games, but ultimately everybody knows it's Justin Fields' show. It's just when's he going to take the wheel? And, you know, nobody knows. There is no perfect time for it. You know, it's all about how the coaches feel about his readiness.
Right, and you know what
because
I think?
Because if he's ready week 1, he'll be out there week 1.
Yes, and that's why I was going with that. It's all hinging on how he plays in the preseason. Of course, you have preseason games tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday to really kick off the preseason, other than when the Steelers beat the Cowboys. You know who I want to see for the Steelers, too? Najee Harris, man. I'm really looking forward to seeing him, man. I think this guy's going to be real good.
And it's going to be cool to see how how the coaches handle these 3 preseason games instead of 4 preseason games. We're so used to the first game. The starters play a series. The second game, maybe they play a quarter. The third game, they play 3 quarters or so. And the fourth game is where you sort of tweak and fill in the back end of your roster, and a lot of those fourth and fifth string guys get playing time. No starters play. Now there's only 3 games. We'll see how they work that out. Do they ever have that fourth type preseason game where it's all back into the roster guys, or is it just you get that first one out of the way where it's the starters don't really play, then you have a second preseason game where you're gearing up, and then that last preseason game is still going to be like the dress rehearsal where starters play at least a half or something like that. We don't know what they're going to do, but we'll get a look and get an idea of how it's going to be from here for who knows how long, because it's the format of the NFL season has changed forever, it seems.
Absolutely.
Like.
And it's going to be a 17-game season this year. So we shall see. I mean, Justin Fields, again, it's going to all hinge on how he plays in the preseason. If he's going to be the starter in week 1, they're probably playing for a half. Most of the starters in that last preseason game, the guys that they know they're going to open up with the following week to start the season, they'll probably play sparingly, and that depends on who they are. It's going to be a lot of these guys that don't even play in the regular season. I mean, in the preseason, like Aaron Rodgers, for instance, he's not going to play.
And what about Dak Prescott? There's a lot of
Dak Prescott. I mean, he may play the last game.
Of course, they're bringing him along
shoulder with
whether or not he'll play. There's a lot of scuttlebutt about whether or not he'll play. But the way the Cowboys feel about it is, to them, whether or not he'll play, it doesn't matter to them. They know. The most important thing to them is having him ready week 1. And they know that that's all that matters. Who cares if he goes out there in the preseason? They already saw what happened last year
without Dak Prescott. And so with that talent around him, and then you have receivers that's interchangeable for Dak Prescott, you want his shoulder right, because you have receivers, and these 3 guys, Gallup, Cooper, and CeeDee Lamb, you have guys that they all can play inside or play outside. So that just opens up things. And you see what Zeke is doing. You see he's down to 218. I mean, that's his lightest he's been since his freshman year at Ohio State. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. All the Cowboys defense have to do is be respectable. Be better than respectable, but Dan Quinn is going to make those guys play fast. You see, they have talent over there. I mean, Michael Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, of course, Jaylen Brown, Van Der Esch.
Oh, somebody call in and stop him. He's going to go all day.
No, man. I'm through with the Cowboys tonight. But I'm really looking forward to seeing how they look this year if Dak can get back in the
I want to see how this first preseason game unloads and how it goes, because the Hall of Fame game, clearly the Hall of Fame game is still treated just like it always was, as a game that really doesn't matter. Get in, get out, get back on the bus.
Right.
To me, I'm happy to see Dwayne Haskins playing football.
He's under good leadership, like I said when it first happened. With the right guy to be under is Mike Tomlin if you're going to resurrect your career. If he doesn't straighten up under Mike Tomlin, who in my opinion is one of the best coaches in the NFL, behind Belichick, maybe the second best coach in the NFL, in my opinion, one of the best ever, even though he coaches for the Steelers. If he doesn't straighten up under Mike Tomlin, I mean, he's not going to make it anywhere. Because Mike Tomlin he's going to give it to him straight. He's going to tell him what it takes to be a professional. He's going to hold him accountable, but at the same time, he's going to lend a listening ear, and he's going to be willing to help Dwayne Haskins with whatever he needs. He's going to put himself in Dwayne Haskins' shoes. Dwayne Haskins has to take advantage of that, and has to realize, not only that, he has to realize this is probably his last opportunity. And
short as his career has been,
yes. So he has to realize that himself. Right. So, of course, Tua has him some weapons.
Well, what I was going to say, too, is that, for Dwayne Haskins in particular, one thing I know, and I haven't spoken with him personally, but one thing I can speculate that he is happy about being in Pittsburgh. He doesn't have any doubt in his mind, or he doesn't have to worry if the head coach and the organization have his best interest at heart. Mm-hmm. Whenever a new head coach comes in that didn't draft you, and you've got a team president, an owner that's always under scrutiny, always in the media for the wrong reasons, that'll turn on you in an instant and trade you away and move on to the next guy. Mm-hmm. I really believe that in Washington, this is an excuse for how things went there, but I believe that Dwayne probably wasn't sure if if they even wanted him there,
they
and
had his
if
back.
they had his best interest in heart. I
Right.
tell you one thing:
That's a
under
good
Mike
point.
Tomlin and in Pittsburgh, he knows that they have his best interest. He knows that Mike, like you said, what you see is what you get, and if he happens to turn his career around and become a success story there, it would be just in the nick of time for the Steelers to replace
There it
longtime
is.
quarterback Ben
That's
Roethlisberger.
what. There it is, man. He has to realize the opportunity that he has right now. Like you said, with Ben Roethlisberger on this last year or two, even though Big Ben says he's feeling so good, he may play 2 or 3 more years. But that's a great point. Dwayne Haskins has to, and that's to my point. He has to realize the opportunity he's in right now. I mean, playing not only under Mike Tomlin, but for a storied franchise who's always good year in and year out. Not saying that the Washington football team won't be, because you know they have a stellar defense. We'll see what Fitzpatrick does. They have some more weapons, but I didn't mention them when I talked about the Cowboys, Giants, and the Eagles. But of course, the Redskins. I'm sorry about that. The Washington football team won the division last year, and that defense with Chase Young, I mean, and they're nice. And with that new linebacker they have out of Kentucky, I mean, whew, they can be very, very special on the defensive side of the ball. And we know Fitzpatrick can give you some games here and there, but eventually he's going to turn back into Fitztragic. He's going to go from Fitzmagic to
Fitzmagic.
to Fitztragic.
You need that Fitzmagic in your life, man.
Yeah. So, but no, Dwayne Haskins is in a great situation. He has to, just from him getting released, he has to humble himself up and realize this is probably his last opportunity, his best opportunity, I mean, for now and moving forward. So we shall see. But real quick before we get out of here, the Browns, of course, Baker, you know, they look like a team on paper that can do some damage. I mean, they're getting Greedy Williams back on the defensive side of the ball. Of course, the running game with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, who's still playing at a high level. A great offensive line. Baker Mayfield has become a better leader. You have Odell coming back. I mean, you see the way he looks off that ACL injury. I mean, 6 or 7 months? That shows you how much of a hard worker that Odell Beckham is. I mean, he doesn't seem like he's missed a beat. He's coming in and out of breaks. I mean, it took me a year to get back from my ACL injury. And some people just heal different. And that guy's just a different animal out there, man. I mean, he did some Adrian Peterson type stuff coming back in 6 or 7 months. He's out there cutting and running like I'm like, he's not wearing a sleeve on his knee or anything. And I'm like, that guy he's looking very good out there on that football field right now, the way he's running routes and things like that.
Well, I mean, dude, this is it. Like, I mean, it's not going to be their last opportunity, but like this is the year where people are gonna hype up the Browns,
Myles
and it's
Garrett,
actually believable.
Jadavion.
Like there's gonna be legitimate money placed on these guys to win the Super Bowl. They're gonna be in the conversation of teams that are gonna go deep into the playoffs, and it's not just going to be hype. It's not just going to be surrounding their roster on paper or the moves that they made in the offseason. It's because they proved that they could beat perennial playoff teams. They proved that their quarterback's good enough to win big games, even in the playoffs. And they proved that defense is withstanding and can play in all types of weather, whether it be hot, cold, rainy. That defense is going to be ready to go. So now that they've had that first season where they were really contenders, but then got knocked off in the playoffs, I think this is the year everybody's saying, okay, this is your opportunity to do like Bum Phillips said, go kick that damn door in and make some real noise in the playoffs. They're primed to do it. This is one team that I think is capable of beating the Chiefs whenever they have, the likes of
almost
Myles
beat them last year in
Garrett,
the playoffs.
and now you're going to have Jadeveon Clowney as well going after Patrick Mahomes. They've got the pieces in place. Now they just got to go out there and do it. And Odell Beckham being healthy like you said he is.
Greg Newsome, Greedy Williams coming back, who was a first-round draft pick the year before, I think. And so he's coming back from injury. So the secondary, you have Delpit coming back at safety, who was highly touted coming out of LSU. So they have a secondary that should be to go along with Ward out of Ohio State, one of the best cornerbacks in the game. I mean, Denzel Ward. So, I mean, they're loaded on both sides of the ball. So now it's just a matter of, and they have the experience from last year, and now they know that they're good and that they can compete and they can win. And it's not just on paper. So they've seen the results.
Right.
So
And they added pieces, bringing Jack Conklin in, and that really helps in their pass protection. We all know that they can run block and they can get the ball moving downhill, but can they keep Mayfield upright, and can they keep him upright consistently? Him being a smaller guy, all it takes is one big hit and your season's over. That was a big addition for them. I know he's going to pay dividends. And then Odell Beckham Jr., like you said, all eyes on him coming back from the injury. Now that the team is in place, and you've got pieces and they're a real contender, how does the season go for Odell? And whenever adversity rears its ugly head, does the old Odell come back? Or is this going to be a guy that's going to have his head down, nose to the grindstone, and be the best Odell Beckham Jr. he can be, and get this team as far as they can go? You get that, OBJ. You get that version of Odell Beckham Jr. and watch out for the Cleveland Browns. I'm not saying they're going to win the Super Bowl, but I guarantee you they'll win their division, and they'll be playing late into December and January.
And you know what? I'm going to bet on Odell. I think he's going to come in with the right attitude. I think he's going to keep the right attitude. And I think they know what type of personality he has. They know that he wants the football, and it will behoove them to get him the football. That betters their chances. And so they have to design some packages. All this stuff about they're better without Odell, that's a bunch of baloney. They're not better without Odell. I mean, you have a guy, Jarvis Landry can't stretch the field as great as he is.
Things may go smoother sometimes without Odell, but it doesn't mean that they're better.
And see, right. And see, that's the thing. I think you add a
But see, that falls on Odell. That it's up to him to make sure that
he's. That's what I'm saying. I think he actually is going to be
performing his role
his
adequately.
Best behavior, and I think it will last throughout the season. And of course, he's going to want the ball. I'm not saying he's not going to have a blow up every now and then, but I think his rookie year, first couple of years, I think that's behind him now. I think the ultimate thing he wants right now is a championship, and he knows that people like you are going to be looking to see if he actually is going to act out and kind of have the team with some kind of tension in it, between it.
When's the first time they get a win and maybe Odell wasn't a big part of the game plan, and he just says something that shows where his feelings are and where his heart is. Because that'll turn his teammates off.
Well, see, that's true. But the thing about it, even last year, I think he was saying all the right things. The last couple of years, I think he was saying all the right things. And even when he got in those meetings, because I was thinking like you, I was like, okay, he only had one catch for like 8 yards. It's almost like they were making him a possession receiver. He only had one catch for 8 yards. But I noticed during the interviews, he was always uplifting his teammates, giving credit where credit is due, and pretty much being happy with the win. Now, if they're not getting him the football and they're losing, no, you're going to see that Odell. But if they're winning, I think everything will be cool. And I think he'll probably say to himself, hey, I just want a Super Bowl. I mean, I want a Super Bowl at this point. Of course, he wants his legacy. He wants to have the numbers comparable to Jerry Rice, continuing on that pace and things of that sort. But he's going to get his. I think Baker is going to make sure he gets his. Stefanski is going to make sure he gets his. And we shall see. But if there's any other team you want to talk about, what about the Raiders? What are they going to do?
I don't know. The Raiders, in the offseason, there was some talk about would they be in on the Deshaun Watson sweepstakes? Are they really sold on Derek Carr? And then training camp starts, and all that's gone. They like Carr. They like their young core players. Nobody cares about the Carl Nassib deal. The only problem with the Raiders is, they're in a division with the Chiefs. And that's it. Because last year the up and coming Chargers. When this Raiders team is a very pesky team, they play up to their competition. Right. There's a lot of times where they'll go out and they'll beat a better team than them. They were able to beat Kansas City last year. And
played with them in that second game.
And it wasn't like you felt like, oh, well, Kansas City didn't come out and get up for this game.
Right.
Or or they just didn't have their best stuff. No, you saw a coach in John Gruden who made it his mission that his offense was going to hang toe for toe with the best offense in the league.
And that's why
by golly, they did it.
That's why they went out and got
exactly
to build an offense similar to the Chiefs,
just
where they can keep up with them.
To put the kind of speed out there that will kill and break the backs of defenses.
Absolutely.
And the speed that the likes of Tyreek Hills and who's that other
young
guy they have over there? Nicole Hardman.
Right.
But exactly when it comes to the Raiders, now it's like, okay, You went through those first couple of years. You got moved to Vegas. Now you've got, your system is established. Your program's up and running. You got rid of all the old guys. You've got young talent in there. Now it's time for them to, like you said, put up or shut up. Mm-hmm. John Gruden's going to be around for a long time. He's got a huge contract. They need to find a way to start chipping away at the armor that the Chiefs wear and start making sure that they're splitting that season series, at least splitting it every season, and that they're not only just playing up to their competition. Don't just get up and get ready to go play the Chiefs just because it's the Chiefs. They got to make sure that they're playing every game like that, they're staying focused, and that they're playing to the best of their ability. If they do, they'll win a lot more games. Then I think that I have to see what Vegas has them at. They probably have them at about a 500 team. I think this team could be well over 500. They are that good. They've got the pieces in place. Derek Carr, when he plays well, man, he could be an MVP sometimes.
I know,
he does have that. He flashes that type of capability.
Gruden can coach the hell out of some quarterbacks.
And he's mobile, which we see how in big games having that mobile quarterback, it really shines in big moments when a quarterback escapes a rush or breaks a tackle that could have been a sack, makes a play down the field. Having that guy, that's when those times become really special, is when you got that guy and he can make that play. Derek Carr's one of those guys.
There it is.
And then on top of that, they've got young talent all across the board. Young tight end that's just a beast.
Oh, he's nice. He's nice.
And, of course, you can't forget about Josh Jacobs in the backfield.
Yes.
One of the,
And Henry Ruggs out there who can take the top off of the
I feel
defense.
like a guy who kind of started.
He can stay healthy.
Who started the trend of it's okay to draft these running backs in the first round. You don't have to wait for them to fall to the third round just to be safe. The guy's got first-round talent. Go ahead and take him. Mm-hmm. Josh Jacobs was that guy, and he's lived up to it. Now, like I said, just got to put the wins in the win column. And I think Chucky can do it. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm high on the Raiders because I think there's still a lot of uncertainty about how they really do feel about Derek Carr publicly. I guarantee you they're all in. But if things don't go well this season, definitely look at them to be trading up in the draft, trying to find themselves in the top 5, calling teams like Green Bay, calling teams like Houston, and seeing who's available, what they can get. Because if Derek Carr and the Raiders don't find a way to make it into the playoffs this year, that they may go ahead and give up on that ticket they punched when they drafted him.
There it is. Hey, and you know what? And real quick, the quarterback Quinn Ewers for Ohio State, the one I talked about earlier, that actually was the top. He was going to be the top high school player in the nation next year, top 2. Next season, skipping his senior year, he's actually from Texas, from somewhere near the Dallas area, I think it is. But, hey, a lot of NFL, good NFL talk. Of course, we will see what the Raiders do in Chucky and Gruden. Next week, we'll break down the 49ers next week. I'm sure Darryl wants to hear about the 49ers.
Definitely. I know he'll be tuning in, listening to that.
Yes. And, hey, one tidbit before I go, something that I think really flew under the radar was the Bucs acquiring Grayson Hill from Memphis. I thought that was a very shrewd move. I like Grayson Hill. Now, here's a guy that can get hot from 3. Not a very consistent three-point shooter, but very streaky. He can knock it down. But I like his attitude. I like his tenacity, to what he's going to bring on the defensive side of the ball to go along with a championship squad already. And he can go get his on the offensive side of the ball. He can take the ball to the rack. So I just thought that was a very good move by the Bucs that flew under the radar, that Grayson Hill move. But you know what? It's time to get out of here, my friend.
It's time to go, man.
Hey, man. Great show, as always. Till next Tuesday, everybody take care out there. God bless. Legends live and let live.
And we'll see y'all next week. It's the Sports Court!